Hey guys, Cody here, coming to you from Southern California, outside. It's a beautiful day out. Hopefully I can get this done before the sun goes down. I wanted to talk a little bit about the explosion at the U.S. Embassy, Tunisia. It's unfortunate and that an individual, a local police officer, died and others were injured in what is likely their attempt to, or they were assigned there to protect the United States Embassy. And so it sounds like all the other measures that are in place, security measures that are in place, led to, keeping other individuals, the American staff and our local staff that work at the U.S. Embassy safe. And so that's ultimately a good thing. Without getting into operational security issues, anyone who's in security management or understands security, there's a thing called security redundancies or layers of security, or concentric layers of security. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. And that individual, that police officer, was working for the Tunisian government, and they are one of our first lines of security at most U.S. embassies, right? So there is, I believe it's Geneva Conventions, but there's a law, an international law out there that dictates that the local country or the host country is responsible for keeping the diplomatic mission safe. And so obviously there's levels there. There's always a threat on U.S. embassies wherever you're at. And other countries that are smaller countries may not get the same level of security from the locals that we do as Americans. But that individual was likely there to assign to the U.S. Embassy, and so in that case, he was there to protect us. So really tragic event, and hopefully those that are injured recover. Let's get into some of the questions that I had. I've been having a great response from the videos, and people still hitting me up on different social media mediums to ask questions. So I'm going to go through a few easy ones that won't take too long, and then I'm going to talk to one that's more of a lifestyle question, but it's a question that you'll want answered if you're going to consider working for DS. So in that case, in keeping with what I was talking about, kind of doing chronologically, right, when you're studying DS or when you're going to consider applying, that you need to know some of the answers to this to make an informed decision if you want to apply. So I'm going to look here to my left on my computer. Is DSS, is the Diplomatic Security Service a federal agency that requires a bachelor's, or do they allow previous law enforcement experience without degrees to join? That's I believe I answered that in my first video, but that is really the only requirement, is that you have to have a bachelor's degree. You can have minimal amount of work experience. If you come in and you're shit hot in the interview, it's possible that you get in, right? But they will not waive the bachelor's degree, 100%. So if you're interested, go get your degree. You can get it from an online university as long as it's accredited, or you can get it from a traditional university, of course. Again, I answered this the other day, but it doesn't matter what type of degree. It can be a degree in anything, and you're eligible at that point. Okay, next question. How often do special agents do protection? Do they get assigned and travel with a principal? So it's a lot of things in DS that depend. How often do we do protection? Really depends on where you're located. So as I mentioned previously, you're going to be very likely assigned to a field office during your first 2 years. Prior to me coming on in 2008, there were options to go to, for example, MSD, mobile security teams, mobile security deployment team, and a couple other options. I think they're trying to avoid doing that. I know they weren't doing it much when I was still in for the 9 years I was in, but you'll likely go to a field office. How much you do protection? If you're in the New York field office or the Washington field office, you're going to do a ton of protection. You're going to do 80% protection. New York, of course, has the United Nations. There are foreign ministers that are going to the United Nations frequently. WIFO, or Washington Field Office, has it's our capital, right? So people are coming to visit quite often. WIFO also has to protect a few additional individuals, diplomats, foreign dignitaries, foreign diplomats that we have kind of a memorandum of understanding with. So a lot of those agents are tasked out from the Washington field office, and that takes up a lot of their time. Do you travel with the principal? It depends. If you're doing if you are in the Houston field office where I was, for example, you know, your protection is going to be a lot lighter. You'll have the option to go overseas and do Secretary of State details, right? You'll augment the Secretary's detail. Or you may be sent somewhere in the U.S. to protect a foreign dignitary. It could be everyone from Prince Harry to the Dalai Lama to some foreign minister no one's ever heard of. But you would go and you would augment those details. Generally, if that individual does not travel, they'll go to one location, let's say Minnesota, and or Minneapolis, and they're in Minneapolis, and you'll stay with them the whole time. And then once they're done, their wheels up, right? They're out of there. Then you will, then you'll just leave, right? Like the next day. There is an individual, if they make multiple stops, if the dignitary makes multiple stops within the U.S., that will ride with them the whole way, and that's the agent in charge. He's usually a senior level, mid to senior level DS agent that stays with the protectee. And they'll fly with him on a plane to different locations. You all, or as a new agent, you would be there to receive them, right? You would be part of the team on the ground that's there to receive them when they arrive. So when you're overseas, the other element is you'll do minimal protection unless you go to a place like Afghanistan or Iraq, in which you sign up to go to where you're going to have one specific job duty. And my job duty when I went to Baghdad was protection, right? I was an agent in charge of a protection detail. I worked with triple canopy dudes, and we protected diplomats going out into the red zone. And so I did a ton of protection there because I was responsible for that. That was my only job duty. Majority, I mean 99.9% of times that you are at overseas, you will not be doing protection. You'll be doing more management type stuff. You'll be managing guard forces, surveillance detection teams, an investigations program. Maybe it's some administrative staff. But that's kind of the protection element. So in short, New York field office, Washington field office, ton of protection. The other field offices, you'll get some sporadically, but not nearly as much. Of course, we have Secretary's detail, which is something you can do as you progress in your career. I think you can do it as a second assignment, and that's all protection there. So I hope that answers your question. If not, hit me up again, and I'll try to elaborate on that. Do DS agents choose where they want to be deployed, or are they only in war zones? So you get to choose. Doesn't mean you'll get it. So there's a thing called the bid list. But what I'll start out with is your first assignment is going to be, like I mentioned, likely a field office. There'll be options. So you're going to be selecting one of our domestic field offices. I mentioned Washington and New York and Houston. There's San Francisco, there's Miami, there's Chicago, there's several around the U.S. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, to go look at them on the State Department, the Diplomatic Security website. So for the first one, you're going to sit there in your class with your friends, and you're going to figure out your top three, where you want to go. I want to go to Chicago, I want to go to Houston, then I want to go to New York. And if you have a small class and there's a certain amount of position, you can negotiate and you can all figure it out. I don't think you ever get 100% where you all figure it out, but you can kind of work that. But you're going to put your top three. You go, at least back when I did it, you articulate why your top three, why you want them, and then the office that handles assignments will give you an assignment, and that's where you'll go your first time. After that, it becomes more complex. After that, there's a thing called lobbying, and you have to lobby. Whether it works or not, some would say it does, some would say it doesn't. That's when networking becomes important, if you ever do a headquarters tour, but another story for another day. So for your second and third and fourth assignment, you'll be able to pick an assignment that's available, whether it's on the summer bid list or a winter bid list. There's two bid lists. Summer has more assignments, more people transitioning during the summer. And you'll be able to pick your top choices. You can pick 1 through 10 if you like. You might not get any of those. Those all go away, you'll pick some more. Now, during that time, you'll be lobbying. You'll hit up the desk in Washington, D.C. that oversees that area. You'll maybe hit up the DCM, which is the second in charge at an embassy. You may hit up the RSO, the regional security officer, who's the DS special agent in charge of security at that embassy. And you're going to lobby, and you're going to try and get your post. I went to Vietnam after Baghdad. Generally, if you go to a high threat location, you have a better shot, or at least you did back in the day. I'm pretty sure it's the same way. You have a better shot at getting to a location that you want. I must have put 4 or 5. I didn't get anything out of Baghdad that I wanted. Then I put Ho Chi Minh City, and it was kind of a gem that no one really knew about, no one really bid on. It was fantastic. It was a great assignment. So, you know, there's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of strategy involved, but you do get to pick, but you might not get what you want. Second part of your question is, are they only in war zones? No, we're in every U.S. embassy in the world. We're in every U.S. consulate in the world. The only exceptions are some of these countries have, China, for example, we have a ton of posts, right? And so one of those posts may only have 4 or 5 Americans at it, in which case a capable individual will be considered a post security officer. And they're not with DS, but they kind of just handle the mundane security issues at posts. And those are usually at smaller posts we call lock and leave posts, where you don't have a Marine detachment, a Marine security guard detachment. And, you know, you lock them at the end of the night and you go home. So, but not only in war zones, we are at just about every, well, definitely every U.S. embassy and consulate in the world where we have representation within that country. Of course, some countries we don't have representation, right? So Iran, we don't have representation. We don't have representation in North Korea, and I think a couple other places. So another one, or the last one is, and this is, it's a lifestyle question, but it's something you'll want to consider before you apply, right? So about half an agent's career, you'll be working overseas, working or living overseas. There's what's called I think it's the 6-year rule now, or the 5-year rule now, where once you're in the States for 5 years, you have to go overseas, right? So you can do a 1-year tour and come back domestically, or you can go and try to stay out overseas, and overseas is where it's at if you want to get promoted and kind of you know, have more responsibility. So the question is, tell me about the lifestyle and living abroad at an embassy. So I liked it. I liked it a lot. Ton of pros out there. First off, it's an adventure. If you're an adventurous person and you get sent to Vietnam or to Lagos, Nigeria, or somewhere, you're in for an adventure. So that's exciting. You get to learn a new culture, learn a new language. You get to try a number of different types of food, particularly local food, and I think that's pretty cool. You do get free housing, so you'll get free housing and it's sizable housing. I was single, and I had a 1,700 square foot apartment in a high rise in the middle of Ho Chi Minh City. It was great. So free housing, which means you're saving all that money, right, on mortgage or rent, and it's really nice housing. Usually really nice digs. If you have children, your children will go to school for free, and oftentimes they're really good schools. Not always, depending on what country you're in. But a lot of these countries, even the third world countries, will have schools. They're called the American school, or the English school, or the Australian school, where it's a lot of expats or people that chose to live overseas and work for corporate organizations that are from any country except the host country, are called expats. And they'll send their kids to those schools, and diplomats will send their kids to those schools, and they're usually pretty good. And a lot of these countries, another thing is a lot of these countries are really cheap to live, right? So you can save a lot of money that way. Depending on where you're at, you could get differential pay. And so if you're in a place that may not be dangerous, but life is just a little more complicated to get things done, whether it be grocery shopping or everyday type of activities, you'll get something called differential pay. So that's a percentage of your base pay. And so, you know, Ho Chi Minh City, I think I had 15% differential pay. And then if you go to a place that's considered dangerous, and there are several, then you'll get danger pay on top of that, right? So it's good. It's good to bank some money. You get the freedom to manage your own program. Sure, you'll have a boss who's a regional security officer, or if you promote to be the regional security officer, you'll report to the DCM, Deputy Chief of Mission. But generally you get to run your own programs. You communicate with DC, with the desk in DC if there's any issues, but on a day-to-day basis, you kind of do your own thing. You get free home leave. So if it's a 2-year assignment, which most assignments when you start are 2 years long, after a year there, you'll get, I believe it's 2 weeks of home leave. They don't take away from your regular leave bank. They just send you home to hang. I mean, now they're not going to put you up anywhere. You're going to have to pay for your own lodging, but they will pay for your tickets for you and your family. So that's a pretty good gig. Of course, if there's pros, there's always cons. One of the biggest issues I had was everyday conveniences just aren't there, right? So in Vietnam, I had internet troubles often. So one, the internet problem, but two, I couldn't communicate with them to fix it in an efficient manner. I got better because I learned the language as time went on, but that was an issue for me. A lot of posts are no drive posts, so you won't drive. So you'll either get you'll get a taxi. You might be close enough to walk, or I had a buddy that lived in he was in Cambodia, and he took a tuk-tuk every day, and he paid like 50 cents, right, to get there and back. And I went visit him one time, and he rolled up with a beer and a tuk-tuk. He came to the restaurant to meet me, and he was in a tuk-tuk. So, but you know, you don't have a car. In some of these places, some places you do. If you do have a car, you might be driving on the opposite side of the road. There's an issue there, right? So, just that's something to consider. You know, communication. I mentioned internet, but communication in person. If you don't learn the language, if you're a spouse, you might not obviously understand the language. In which case, there's going to be communication issues, right? You're going to just try to go order at a restaurant, and you won't have success, right? Now, granted, a lot of these places have Western style restaurants, even if they're local food, where they speak a basic level of English and you can order. But if you really want to kind of embrace the culture, which I'm big on going overseas, embracing that culture, then you're going to go to a place that doesn't speak a lick of English, and you might have some struggles. Sicknesses, depending on where you are, the food might make you sick. The environment might make you sick. You could get malaria if you're in some places. You know, obviously there's shots for that. There's ways to mitigate that, but that's something you need to consider. And a lot of people that haven't really left the U.S. often, you know, you're going to get lonely. You're going to miss your family and friends. You know, your spouse may be working often, and you have each other. And if you don't make friends, you know, if you don't make friends easily, then that can be an issue for you. You know, now communities, embassy and consulate communities, depending on where you are, it can be very cliquish, where it won't let you in, or it might have different cliques, or it can be very inclusive, and that usually depends on the people there, right? I've had both. I've experienced both, and I've lived at 5 permanently because I was a Marine security guard, so I lived in 2 and then 3 as a DS agent, and then I had short-term TDYs or long-term TDYs, whatever you consider, 3 months, at places, and I've experienced both. So community, I guess, is what you could miss. And lastly, and there's probably other things, but these are the ones I thought of. Local laws prevail, right? You don't, just because you're a diplomat and have diplomatic immunity, you don't just get away with all the laws. You deal with basic local laws. And there's places like, for example, in the Middle East, I think it's Saudi Arabia, where if you're a woman, you still need to cover up. Now, to what level you need to cover up, I'm not sure. There's also, for people who like to drink, I happen to like to have a drink every once in a while. there are places, Kuwait's one of them, and maybe Saudi. I haven't actually been to Saudi, but there's no drinking right now unless you go to the Marine House. Marine House is, and that's another question. If anyone is interested, just hit me up and I'll talk about it. But Marines do security at U.S. embassies, right? They're responsible for security. They fall under the regional security officer and diplomatic security. But Marine houses have alcohol, even if you're in Kuwait or Saudi Arabia. My understanding is there's a list to get into those embassies to hang out and have a drink. So anyway, those are some of your cons. So I'm pushing 20 minutes. Appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. I'm happy to do this. I'm enjoying it. So let me know, what else I can answer. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I'm at agentsunknown_book. Same thing with Twitter. You can follow my name, Cody Perron, Agents Unknown. I'm also on LinkedIn. And I'll be promoting an audiobook. Audiobook should be coming out in April. So for those of you that have a long commute, or those of you that just enjoy audiobooks or are traveling a lot, I think it's professionally produced, professionally directed, and professionally edited. So I'm pretty pumped about that, and I think it's going to be really enjoyable. So thank you all for your support, and whatever I can do to help, hit me up, and we'll make it happen. All right, thanks. Out.